Jonathan, you want to?
Right. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time together to come and do the business of our city. We're grateful for the men and women serving on this advisory board to help us review our charter. And we just pray for your continued guidance and wisdom throughout this process. Father, we also pray for our staff and thank you for the support that they provide in this effort. It's not only important to our staff and team here at City Hall, but also to all of our citizens and businesses who live, work, and play in our great city. Father, we're mindful of our men and women in uniform who protect us and give us the right to do that, which we do here today. So we just lift them up in prayer. We pray for those that are currently deployed, Father, that you would keep them safe. And once their mission is complete, would you bring them back safely to their family and friends? Again, we ask that you bless our time together today, give us wisdom and discernment and everything that we think, do, and say, and may it all bring honor and glory to your name. Christ, I now pray. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chairman Burke.
Here.
Mr. Danzy.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrera.
Here.
Mr. Henderson Jansenius.
Here.
Ms. Schoon. Here. Chairman, you have quorum.
If I may briefly, Mr. Chairman, I'll just point out, we have a new person at the table today, Ms. Brandy Waldron. If you did not know, Ms. Smith has announced her retirement from the city effective sometime in early to mid-August.
August 10th.
She knows the date, so she will obviously continue on with the critical role that she plays and assisting with this. The commission has named Brandy Waldron as the interim city clerk treasurer in the time being, but again, Jan still has a lot of value and apparently till August 10th will continue to help and aid us in this effort. So I just want to introduce Ms. Waldron to the advisory board.
Brandy,
Yes,
were you already with the city or are you new to the city?
yes, I have been with the city, March will be 22 years. And I also serve as one of the assistant city managers. And when we had this position vacant 5 years ago, I filled in as interim while we did the search then.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll do the consideration of the minutes for any comments and suggestions or anything. I only have one question. I know that it's something wrong, but when I went down to Article Section 9, Article 13, the third bullet point, the recommendation from ICMA, I shouldn't know who that was.
The International City County Management Association.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We'll just write that out.
Certainly.
It's like a small thing, but.
Move we approve as amended.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Would you staff report? I have one kind of just like almost procedural thing. If y'all don't mind, if we can do this real quick. And I mentioned it before we left. Do any of you guys know or do you have access to the schedule and kind of like where we are in relation to where we need to be? Remember, we kind of came up at the very beginning of here's where we were trying to be at certain points. I feel like we're a hair behind, but I should have looked and like how far behind are we?
Everybody's looking at you, Ms. Smith.
In the minutes from the very.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, can y'all, once you find that, then we'll come back to it. Okay. Now that
Here we go. We have August. You want to go ahead?
yeah.
August
yes,
28th was Article 1 and 2, September 25th, 3 and 4, October 23rd, 5 and 7, November 20th, 8 and 9. Yeah, so like by this meeting, February 26th, we were to be substantially through every article except for public utilities and boards and commissions. February 26th, we should be discussing finance generally and Article 15 taxation. So we are actually still on city officer, city manager, city attorney, and city clerk. We have not looked at police and fire. Maybe 2 meetings behind.
When were we supposed to be like finished with the city manager, the charter officers?
So, meeting number 4, October 3rd. October 23rd, sorry, was supposed to be Article 5, city officers, employees and departments generally, and Article 7, the city manager. And then November 20th, the Article 8, the city attorney, and Article 9, police protection. Then January 29th, Article 12, fire protection, and Article 13, city clerk and collection.
It's fine. I mean, we're definitely behind, but we've still got March, April,
May,
May.
June, July.
There was a lot of built-in extra time
Yeah.
for this, you know, honestly, and you did, I think there was an early meeting that got postponed because there was a conflict with everyone, so some of that.
I believe we added this
Yeah,
one today.
we did.
This one, so this today is.
Jamaica.
Yes. And an opportunity to get ahead, maybe, and make up some ground.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, I have a hard get out of here at 2:15.
Actually, I was gonna also. We have to do. All right, so with that, staff reports.
So, the first thing that I have, is an email that I received today from one of the former city clerks and her opinion on, how the city clerk and treasurer functions should be, aligned in the chart. And, she doesn't really say the charter, but, I added it to your table there. The city clerk and treasurer functions are comprised of 2 different disciplines. And she believes there should be 2 positions, a clerk and a finance director.
Is this the lady that usually sits as?
Yeah.
Yes, and I believe she served as deputy clerk and then clerk for a number of years with the city,
I
correct?
served as deputy treasurer, which used to be called manager of accounting services, and that's when she was here. And then she was city clerk treasurer.
And I agree with her assessment of, that's exactly how I was hired, as a person with a finance background. And then I was expected to, become certified municipal clerk. So I came in as a CPA and I got my CMC while I was here. So, she's spot on with what past practice has been.
The board's okay with it. If there's any questions, go for it. But this is gonna wrap up very well when we get to the clerk discussion. Any other staff reports?
Yes, and I'll just, the spreadsheet that I forwarded around and then made copies for, so I can give the Reader's Digest version, Mr. Chairman, board members. So basically, the question was asked of Florida League of Cities, you know, kind of how is the clerk position and the treasurer position kind of set up across the system? And so there's, you know, maybe, 70, 80 cities here that I gave as examples. And what I would say is, the summary version is that usually the clerk's office is a much smaller team. You'll see most of them are like 0 to 5, very small team. So that means it does not include your accounting component. You know, the accounting, the payroll, that kind of stuff is often separate. So I think what you would see, most cities would have the clerk, him or herself, report under the city manager, but that would be strictly with the minutes, the public records. Those types of things, getting, the flow of contracts and those appropriate things signed. And then either a treasurer or maybe like a CFO would be something that would be separate and report directly to the commission for, again, those checks and balances. Although there are some where I would say maybe 10 or 12 do have everything under the city manager. So you basically just have a city manager and a city attorney. But the overwhelming majority have the CFO separate from the city manager, very similar to our city.
And the documents that I have, I put them on the right side. We have the working charter with the red lines of only that which this board has approved. There's been a lot of discussion of things that you're gonna come back to and tweak that is not redlined here, because it has not officially been voted on and approved. But this just gives you a working document so you can see where we are as far as what has actually been approved. And
Circle.
and so that was requested by the board that we complete that. And then next after that is to support what Jonathan was talking about regarding all the different manners in which the clerk treasurer's position is done throughout the state. My memo does gives you examples of language from, I pulled about 15 different charters from around the state. None of them are the large cities like maybe Tampa. Those all use strong mayor form of government. So I only went with forms of government that matched our city. And so there are examples of language of how other charters describe the city clerk's position and the treasurer's position, many of which are all finance directors in other municipalities. So that gives you a lot of different examples of language as was requested by the board. Let's see. And then and included in that, I'll point out, is the model city charter as well. That's one of the 15. Then I did an update to one of the memos that I did, the one that was dated January 20th. There was language in that for a brand new section that would address how an acting city manager would be appointed. And the samples that were provided in that memo, the board indicated that you wanted to see what our code of ordinances already provides for. So this just amends that to add in what our code, the City of Panama City's code, and how we're actively doing it. That's what that red line language is. And then there was simply a request for the organizational chart from Coral Springs, and I just threw that in because my notes indicated somebody was interested in seeing that.
Any questions about any of that stuff right now? I mean, a lot of it's gonna roll up into the stuff we've been discussing, but. Okay, and I think I just got. Do we have any audience participation?
Is anybody online, Ms. Cloud?
3 people, Nina, Terry, and Ian.
Oh, yes, so the only folks online, sir, are the former retired city clerk treasurer, as well as representatives from the super overlay. So there's no, I don't know if Ms. Lillard would like to say anything. Are you able to see her?
Mhm.
Oh, she does. Are you able to put her on the screen?
Mhm.
Thank you, ma'am.
You can unmute. Let's see. You should be unmuted.
Ms. Lillard, are you there? Try again, Ms. Lillard. We think we've unmuted you. Oh, ask to unmute.
I tried to unmute.
There we
There
go.
you are.
All right.
Okay. No, I don't really have anything else other than what I sent you. And I just think you all have done a great job in putting a lot of thought and detail into this charter review.
Can you just state your name and address for the record, ma'am? Thank you.
Yes, Terry Lillard, 1016 West 9th Street, Panama City.
Thank you so much. Ms. Ward, do you have anything to add at all, ma'am? My assumption is probably no, sir. The SOE doesn't.
Yeah, when we get to that point,
Okay.
we may even have questions for her.
Yeah.
That won't stick around. Would you guys indulge me super quick before we get to the city manager stuff? If I did a review of what we have so far, a handful of like kind of almost like Scrivener's comments, which I can get with Nevin or you guys with afterwards, but there's just things I can go through in about 60 seconds. So number one is, can y'all clean up the pronouns in there? It constantly says he.
There is a way to simply have kind of an overall language that allows for all of the for gender neutral language to be added, so you can just do.
So there'll be a separate sentence or section that says that when this is adopted, that everything will be gender neutral.
So, right, so in the redlining, there was a time when one of the amendments that you passed, you asked for it to be gender neutral. I didn't go and do that
At some
everyone,
point, at some point.
right,
They
because
get
you can just do a blanket amendment for that
Is this something we need to vote on? Is that what?
at some point.
We can vote on that next.
Motion to go at some point make the charter gender neutral.
I believe I presented some language of us in one of the memos.
Need to say their motions and
Motion,
I'll motion
Okay.
to adopt gender neutral pronouns for everything we do.
okay?
debate. All in favor?
Aye.
And then just another thing, I don't even think necessarily this things that it requires a vote, just consistent terminology, like sometimes it's city commission, sometimes it's commission, and sometimes it's capitalized and sometimes it's not. So let's just make sure we go through there and like that it's one thing throughout. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, regarding that, in order to modernize the language, at one point, there was discussion about when it says mayor commissioner, to drop the word commissioner, but you want to be consistent in that the mayor is a commissioner, as opposed to other municipalities which pull the mayor out and is not. And
Right,
so-
I mean, I know, bear with me, Ron's getting anxious because I'm so down. Like, I understand the commission is the body that's comprised of 5 things, but sometimes it's called city commission, sometimes it's just called commission, sometimes it's capitalized, sometimes it's not, just make it consistent, that's all I'm asking.
We can do that too, yeah.
I have some comments about the substance of the other stuff.
It's grammar. The first thing that we voted on is subsidy. The second is just.
I've got a couple other just style things, but I'll get with you guys after about that. Okay, all right. All right, you want to talk about city manager stuff? So
Where did we leave that? We talked a lot about city clerk last time. Were we talking about city manager in last meeting?
Yeah, I think we left on the city class.
we can jump to city clerk. Somebody tell me where they want to go. Just following the agenda.
I think we were starting to drill down on whether we need the city clerk to do a highest. What was tied to who does that person report to? So just.
Not a loaded question. Part of me wants to do manager and attorney because I think those are probably a little bit cleaner and then spend the rest of the time on clerk.
That works.
Part of me is also like, let's get clerk out of the way, but I'm open to. Can we do manager attorney first?
Yeah.
Okay. So Nevin, you have proposed language here for city manager regarding acting city manager and this temporary arrangement.
Yeah, and that's consistent with our existing ordinance.
So, or my suggestion would be, again, bear with me because I draft things like this regularly, would be to pull out the aspects of a deputy city clerk and put that under the city clerk provision. It feels weird to have a city manager clerk things under a manager thing. And then I would suggest adding something along the lines of, unless there's a reason not to, that the 15 working days could be exceeded based on the approval of the commission. But I don't know what this is intending to solve.
That was my question, which is even needed.
That's what we do now without being in the journal. As far as there is it a resolution or an ordinance?
It's an ordinance.
It's an ordinance. And so that's, when Jonathan leaves, he'll appoint the acting city manager, sends it around to all the commissioners. I'll be gone following 4 days, 2 days, whatever. And then either Randy or Jared will be designated as acting.
Do you feel like in the absence of something in the charter that says that somebody else can act with that authority, then it's not as clear?
I think it's fine to put it in the charter, but I don't know that it has to be in the charter.
Yeah, I mean, that was my question is, without it in the charter, it doesn't make it murky, and with it in the charter, is it better?
For lawyers, it's always good to be very specific. It's always better. More is better.
It's hard to change, I guess, would be the.
I mean, Nevin, I'll defer to you. If you think it's appropriate to go with the charter, as long as we separate out the clerk and the manager, and then I think if we just put something else that it could be extended upon the approval of the commission, I'm fine.
Is there an equivalent for city attorney?
He's irreplaceable.
Right, I understand that.
We haven't seen that draft.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, when it comes to city manager, a lot of it has to do with spending authority. So when I'm out, if there's a purchase order or a check request that comes through, if I don't appoint one of them acting city manager, do a formal memo to that end, they don't really have the authority to go in and then approve.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying though is it not sufficient that it just be by resolution? Is it something that needs to go in the charter so that it's clear when that person can't make those decisions, it's delegable?
I don't think it has to, but let me answer the question on the city attorney. My contract, Bert Blue and me personally have a contract with the city. And that names people that can also act as city attorney, which are Natalie, Mike Burke, gives a list of those people. So it's done by contract under the authority of the city commission shall designate a city attorney. And then you have a contract and that deals with what happens if I'm not available.
So I know I'm not trying to push this through, but board, do we want this in the charter or do we not? And that's a genuine question. Not.
Is there the same language in their contracts?
No, because it's in the ordinance.
I think it's important that it is part of the charter, even if it's by.
My preference is that it be in the charter just because that way it doesn't run into this possibility of people changing it through ordinance.
Is anybody strenuously opposed to it being added to the charter?
I mean, but either way, I'm not strenuously in favor of this. I think it's.
So can I get a motion to approve? Sorry.
In operational, if the city manager decides to go on a week's vacation, he has to make enough plans to let the board know to make an appointment for the city manager.
Well, I can do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take board approval,
No,
it's just, okay.
That's right.
All right.
Not to muddy the waters or anything, but there is another alternative to this, if this is something the board does not want in the charter at all, is Jonathan effectively changes Randy and I's title instead of assistant city manager, it's deputy. And then we can assume his authorities without a memo or designation. Deputy connotates we have the authority, it's implied designation versus authorized
Well, the military, going from that, to my background, when I started here, this would all be in writing. When the staff judge advocate left the base, Captain Spoon, come on in here. You're gonna sit first week and so, it was written. Because any command decision, court martial, article, whatever, contract, it was locked down. There was no question because there had been a delegation in writing.
And to your point, ma'am, like when Jonathan gives that delegation on high dollar check requests, change orders, contract contracts, we always attach that memo.
Yeah,
So our auditors, it's cleaner.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
just,
an
it's
internal thing.
cleaner.
Yeah, because I think everybody's on the same page, so there needs to be some paper trail. The question is whether it belongs in the charter. And as a policy nerd, it probably is cleaner that it goes in the charter. That way it's very clear that when that person's not there, there's a process to delegate that authority. And so I'm
I think it's excellent to put it in the charter.
Yeah, provides the authority. Otherwise, if the authority is not provided, then who has the authority?
Right. If I hear Jared right, and I agree more with Jared, operationally, if you're in a deputy position, the opinion of command falls next to the deputy city attorney anyhow. We don't have to do a 15-day notice.
So that does muddy the waters, what I said, but the flip side of that is what I'm hearing from y'all is that exposes his staff to additional risk.
It's not a 15-day notice. It's up
It's a
to
15
15
up
days.
to.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a 5 minute.
I think it's just cleaner and easier and everybody understands. What you suggested is efficient, but depending on personalities, there could be problems.
100%.
So why do that?
I get a motion to approve this with the separation of the clerk, manager, and adding in language that it can be extended upon approval of the commission.
Separation of, what do you mean?
It could be two different paragraphs to vary in that we can extend it.
I would make a motion that we adopt the proposed language, removing discussion about the city clerk.
So we get to that.
Okay, that's fair too.
So your motion is that we adopt this language regarding the city manager.
Right, but do not adopt the
From the city clerk.
language about the city.
Debate. Then are you okay with adding in the language about it can be extended by the commission? That's my suggestion. So it's 15 days, about up to 15 days, but it can be extended if the commission approves it beyond 15 days. And my thought process being, perhaps Jonathan gets into an accident or he's sick and he's indisposed for 30 days.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah, I
Yes.
agree.
So all in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Did you need to get a second to the amendment to the amendment?
I was just clarifying what your
Yeah.
amendment was. I think. And you clear on that?
Adopt the proposed language, removing references to the city clerk and add that the city commission can extend the 15 day.
The compensation for the city manager, we could let that kind of open-ended. Are we going to put something in the charter that aligns more with what the compensation should be? Rather than the subjectiveness of the board making that decision? We talked about this with commissioners, but the city commissioner commission structure, the attorney, well, the attorney's fine. Separate. Do we have additional language regarding compensation?
That's a discussion that you want to have.
What do you think?
I think aside from the city manager position, is our mayor and our commissioners, how do we, is there a standard with the league's city, I guess the league of.
So, Mr. Chairman, hold on. I did ask that.
Are we talking about manager comp or are we switching to commissioner comp?
Both. We have to propose the compensation in general, compensation being city manager we can discuss first.
Why are those being lumped together?
Just compensation underneath the article in general. We left it open-ended on the city commission board.
This is just for the city manager, that's the theory.
Well, that's one part I understand.
That's fine. We can talk about city manager.
We can talk about something, yeah.
I'm looking to standardize the compensation language across the charter for all of the positions. Ultimately, but we can start with the compensation here.
Yeah, I think that would be, I think it raises a good point, but probably just for proper notice, probably just focus on the job of the city manager and the compensation is really nice if you got it settled.
So then,
Maybe not today.
okay. So if we stick with the manager compensation alone, Brandon, where do you want to go with that?
Where did it come from currently? How do we determine the compensation for the city managers?
It just, you negotiate a contract. Yeah. They will have some information that they, receive, kind of average salaries, and that is the information you can get from the FCCMA, which is the Florida City County Management Association level, which is basically association, which is the state chapter of the ICMA. So they provide that, and then you negotiate based on, experience and that. So it's purely negotiation.
And that's directed by the board currently.
Right.
And is the association referring to the group that spoke to us?
Well, that was Florida League of Cities. Florida League of Cities has to do more with elected officials and charters. The FCCMA, the ICMA has to do more with professional management of an organization such as a city, town, or county. A little bit different. As an aside, I did ask the Florida League of Cities about like salary data. And what I was going to start to say is they really don't have that kind of stuff because everybody does it so different.
Mhm.
It's not really something they get in, it's a little different. So yeah.
Then I would probably be in favor of just removing the compensation from the plan altogether. If it is 2 or 3 positions that answer directly to the board, I would kind of trust the process of what the hiring process looks like. It is contract based, right? It's negotiated. There may be a standard that could be set during the process, but that can be provided by HR or anybody up to that. Or I would probably be in favor of just removing compensation in general.
Well, what is the language that's already there?
It's section 101.
Which I'll fix the compensation.
It's in 2 places. It's in section 82.
That's of officers.
I think the charter should say who fixes the compensation.
Yeah, I
agree.
That's
Yeah.
the purpose, yeah.
Mhm.
Fixes a probably a real arcade.
We're not holding, we're not tying them up.
Fixes.
Fixes in.
Fix the compensation. Sorry about that.
That's how you really feel.
Is that a me?
Making sure that Danny was.
The compensation and
That was great.
That was like grief.
Pretty timing.
So, move forward with compensation.
Yeah, I think we're.
Yeah.
I'll fully fall on my sword that I skipped over 82. I mean, I saw the compensation and I thought I didn't understand how it works. I guess there's one phrase in here, and this may be important, maybe what's actually happening. Under 82, it says the city commissioner shall fix the salary or compensation of the city attorney, city manager, and city clerk. The city manager, except as may be otherwise provided with the approval of the city commission, shall fix the number and compensation of all other officers and employees. Is that like with the approval of the city commission? Is that how that actually works, or is that effectively baked into the budget?
It's in the budget.
So-
When we bring like our compensation plan, our step and grade program that we developed years ago, that was actually presented to the commission for them to adopt before that was ever implemented. And then it was then budgeted and voted on as well.
Is it as granular as here's every position and every salary?
So it's grades. So in every position's broke up into a grade. And then you've got steps for longevity.
Feel like military.
I gotcha.
It's very DOD based.
But in the real budget, it's line by line. My name is in there, Randy's name is in there.
But everybody got a grade or a whatever it's
Right.
called, a grade.
Yes.
Police officer position, and we may have 80 of those, and you'll see a grade and, the
So Mr. Chairman, prior to that, we would actually go out and get a salary survey from an independent consultant. And they would say, here's where your positions fall, and based on surveys of your town size, the cost of living, everything else. And then we'd get a report back. They'd say, this is how much it's going to cost to true up your file. We do that about every 5 years.
Without understanding that, I need issues with that.
Well, there is some language that may be of an issue in 82. Third sentence, I guess, the salary or compensation so fixed shall be uniform for like services in each grade of city service. As the same shall be graded or classified by the city manager.
that's our pay plan.
Mhm.
And it's regardless of the STEP program or the salary survey program. It's whatever program the commission.
I think the intent of it is very, very positive and very, very good. And as someone who's seen different pay for women doing the exact same work as men, you know, this is over the years. That's kind of a helpful thing to discourage that kind of, you know, difference in pay for the same work. But when you're talking about negotiating for the lawyers and negotiating for a city manager, that is individual based on your expertise and experience that you have. And that could be conceivably down the road an issue because it wouldn't be.
It would be what?
Would not be uniform because you're basing it on, hey, you had 20 years as a city manager of a larger city. You just move in here because you have a grandbaby here, you know, but you would, that person would have tremendous amount of experience and perhaps should not be paid the same as someone who's just brand new or has 2 years in. I just wonder if that, I mean, no one's probably raised the problem, but since.
Are you talking about the charter officers?
Yeah.
City manager.
So those are the contracts that are negotiated.
That-
The other,
That's operational, but that's not what this says. That's what's happening by ops. That's not what this written sentence says.
Sentence you just read.
that
I read
refers.
that, yeah, I read that version.
Okay, how do you help me? So I-
Well, the
So
way I'm
those are-
reading it, I'm not sure this is what's actually happening, is I'm reading it as the individual employees, they get basically graded or classified by the city manager. So.
Right, through my
so-
HR director, that is correct.
Yeah, so you have all these grades, 1 through 10, I don't know what it
Yes,
is,
sir.
no idea.
Like
And
the
then you would have the discretion to say, congratulations, you're moving up to a 3 or 10 or whatever.
We have a process, but yes, we look at their work history and it's depending on if they've done similar type of service and work in that job, we can give them additional steps.
Yeah, And there's objective and subjective portions of that, or is it purely?
We try to do very objective. I mean, there might be a little bit of a job and we kind of talk through that, city manager's office and the HR director.
There was a clause that I
Yeah.
didn't pick up on because it initially does list all the charter employees. But the very next sentence says of all other officers and employees, and then it follows on to say there will be uniform. So they're accepting the charter employees. So the charter employees would not, that issue would not.
That is weird. It says all other officers. That is kind of odd. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they list the city attorney, city manager, and city clerk. And then it says all other officers. Yeah, who officers?
You could just
Yeah.
strike other officers and just say employees, you know.
That would probably clear it up, because that's what I
And
got.
I would not set the salary for the two of them. That's between the commission and them. You're
Right,
correct.
that's where I kind of got like, oops, you know, we're
Who are
wanting
those
to
officers?
negotiate, but we're.
Yeah, find it. I'm pretty sure I saw on here that the commission has the authority to appoint other officers if they need to.
But then they would fix the.
Yeah,
Right, so I think we just put a period after officers all day.
Well, we don't want to use the word
All other employees.
shall fix the number and compensation. Oh, I see what you're saying, because then there may be some other officers.
That's what maybe they not actually know what they would do, but they.
Well, I think the way it's written protects the two charter office employees that we know. And what Brandon is saying is if there's additional that the commission appoints, they would be protected too.
I mean, we go back to 79. Says all our officers and departments, city attorney, city manager, city clerk, and such other departments as the city commission deems appropriate.
If you had a city clerk and then maybe you added a CFO and that's your other officer.
Something like that. I mean, I don't.
But then wouldn't the city commissioner fix that? That would be in the first sentence.
Yes.
Or the way this is worded, though, the city manager would do anybody else.
I think it would be okay to separate the two and say the city
I think that all of,
commission, the commission sets the officer compensation and then the city manager sets the employee compensation.
That's good, but
And just keep it separate. So there's the team manages the city. Separate officers and employees into two sections.
I would agree that would be more clear.
So we would start with separation in 79, 82, and 101.
I would argue that section 82, if it's defined clear enough, can compensate for all of the other compensation sections underneath it.
That does simplify it.
Yeah,
So if you have
okay.
3 charter officers, other officers as the commission deems appropriate, which they would determine their compensation. And then the commission still does the grades, like the rates of pay for the various grades, and then the manager is what determines who's in what grade based on
What
objective.
position, correct. They establish the grades and then the steps and what that looks like in the pay plan, but then I determine which positions go in which grades. And if we give them additional credit, higher steps. So that's correct.
For all other.
For all other employees.
Positions go in which grades?
I mean, like department heads, so chiefs and directors are one, assistant city managers are another. You know, division managers are different ones depending on, you know, the size of the budget, the operational level that they have, any type of requirement. So we actually have 26 different grades, but most of our positions are in between 4 and 26. And then we have 16 steps. You can get 16 steps of seniority. Very similar to the GS scale with the federal government.
Yeah,
Yep.
that sounds awesome.
That was a change that was made in October of 2021.
The county phone.
Yeah.
Pay plans.
So your office and yourself, city manager, a lot of flexibility to kind of look
Right.
at what the experience that the person has and kind of match it up.
But I typically will defer to the ACMs and the HR director to kind of look at that in a very objective fashion on how much seniority they're given credit for with relevant job experience.
Okay.
To make it, I mean, I agree, there's always going to be a smidge of subjectivity in it, but I would say the overwhelming majority of it is very objective, and that's how the HR team approaches it very consistently.
All right, board, tell me if you're okay with this. I've got 3 changes that all work together. So in section 79, I'm suggesting that we revise the language where it says the colon. Semicolon, I forget which portion. City attorney, city manager, and a city clerk and such other officers change departments to officers as the city commission deems appropriate. Then under 82, the city commissioners shall fix the salary and compensation of the city attorney, city manager, city clerk, and other officers. And then the city manager, except as provided herein, shall fix the number and grade of all other employees. And then the rest of it seems to fit fine.
Okay, so, and other officers, you want to put if any?
The other officers, I'm suggesting we strike that out, but just add other officers to the end of the first sentence of it.
No, I was on the first sentence.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I
If any, that's
wasn't
fine.
clear.
Yeah, sorry.
city-
City clerk and other officers, if any, that's fine.
Just so that people don't go, hey, what, you know. I heard this.
And then the next sentence where it says the city manager, except as otherwise provided, shall fix the number and grade of all other strike officers and of all other employees, or of all employees, either other or just all.
We're taking out officers.
Correct.
To one step further, to provide clarity that section 82 be compensation of officers, and then add a section 83 to be compensation of employees.
Yeah.
And to just separate the two.
Okay. And then that would, and then the last thing would be that would allow us to remove section 101.
Absolutely.
There you go. So the suggested revision of 79, the suggested revision of 82, with Brandon's suggestion that you divide up compensation of officers and compensation of employees. And if I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, if you do section 82, compensation of officers, it's one sentence. You just go city clerk and other officers as applicable, or if any, period. And that's the end of that sentence. That's the end of that section. And then you go to a new 83, and 83 discusses employees and the grades and the manager and all that stuff like we have. Does that reflect what y'all were
Absolutely.
And then the removal of 101 and then just a catch-all. I mean, if I'm assuming, and we'll get there, you know, if the clerk, whatever, if the clerk has how they're compensated or the attorney has how they're compensated, it's all covered in the new 80, the new 82.
I'll second that.
I guess I did the motion. All right. Any other discussion or things thoughts? All in favor?
Did you say you made the motion?
Yeah.
Can you make the motion?
You can second motions, but you can't
Yeah.
make motions.
Someone else makes the motion.
You make the motion?
I'll make the motion
I'll
for
second.
everything that Brandon just said.
I'll second.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
But you can second them. I don't want to take all the power from you. You can second motions though.
I mean, rarely can the seated leader of the committee make a motion, just to avoid the appearance of.
Sometimes. Okay, what else what's the next? Well, any help on manager? I mean, I have a couple of things. So one of the things I looked at was 82. Sorry, misspoke. 102. And there was this.
That's a pretty important paragraph. This is a pretty important paragraph.
Well, I mean, there's this strenuous removal process, and I don't know if that's necessary or it seems like a lot.
We discussed this briefly, and I think in the meeting you were here. I don't know
Yeah.
where we landed, or I think we stayed. We
We
didn't.
were both ends of the fence. We said, do we strike it or do we keep it? And then we were stuck between the two.
You said we wait till Brandon got.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's what we said.
Jonathan, your contract, is it effectively an at-will contract?
Yes, sir.
Do they have city manager contracts that are like annual, do you know?
That's a really good question.
Some cities do.
And you have to renew it annually?
Yeah, it's like, they'll have like it's not typically a year, it's like a 3 to 5 year and they'll renew it and salary negotiations happen again. So. I think it's rare in Florida, but I think it happens a lot in Texas.
My contract requires me to give 60-day notice, as did Ms. Smith's. But yeah, they could add to the meeting this coming Tuesday and vote to send me back in.
Do you have strong feelings about this process where if you've been here for 6 months, you go in front of the commission in a public hearing? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do think, obviously, City Hall, county building, I mean, it's a political institution. I do think that putting in some appropriate barriers to somewhat shield maybe the city manager or county manager. That being said, however, in order for this to actually work, I mean, you don't want to completely tie the hands of your elected officials who are there on behalf of the citizens of the respective city or county. So I wouldn't want to be in a situation where, you have, the citizens want to make some big changes. And then, you elect a bunch of new officials and, they just want to remove someone, without any real reason.
Right, just because you're old, been there before.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 cents on this is
The fine line.
this creates kind of a lot of pomp and circumstance. And it certainly could be something that could be negotiated in a city manager contract. It's like, I can be terminable with 30 days notice, the opportunity to cure, all this kind of stuff. It just feels very awkward in a charter to say that we're going to go through this process despite what's in a contract. I would just suggest putting a period at the end of the city commission. The city manager shall be removable by the city commission. And then if you guys negotiate otherwise, then so be it.
To create some system. Yeah, I guess the challenge people are different. Like, I have the view that if there was a parting of ways, like I would never ever want there to be some big, like it's just not professional. It doesn't help the city.
Yeah.
If there's a majority that wants me to move on, I respect that. And that's this business. And I think you just have that's how you're going to see that across the whole country with cities, towns, villages, and counties. So, again, without violating federal law, of course.
I hear what you're saying. But having seen very bad decisions by large corporations also, but in particular, governmental entities that seem to be motivated by what's considered illegal things. This is like a wall against that. And if anything like that were to happen, let's say in Panama City, it's a lot cheaper to have that hearing early on than wait 4 or 5 years later and have a massive litigation, which is what's happening in Lynn Haven. There's like 8 lawyers involved. It's like every time we meet, it's like $3,000. So yeah, it's a pinch in the beginning, but you can, if anything were that crazy, you address it right then, you move on, right? Usually, person would move on if they had a hearing and people came forward and said whatever they were gonna say early.
So I think what I would say is that at the end of the day, citizens and elected officials are allowed to make bad decisions because that's extremely subjective. They're not allowed to make illegal decisions. I do believe, and someone floated this on, because this is kind of self-serving, but someone else suggested it. I don't remember who it was, but one thing that would be, I think could maybe kind of put those buffers up is that you can get appointed with a simple majority, but it would require a super majority to be terminated. So either 4/5 or 5/7, depending on, how many, then that way you don't just have, kind of the wind of tide. So you really have to have, a really strong consensus on your elected body to terminate a city manager.
I would say that doesn't protect against malice because people are political and people get their arms, commissioners get their arms.
But if I'm in my role, since you asked my opinion, if
Mhm.
4 out of my 5 commissioners want me gone, I don't want to be here. That's no way to live life, in my opinion. Now, some people may like that, but I'm not a professional city manager. So, you got some that move around, from town to town to town. That's not me, so I might not be the best person to speak to this, Mr. Chairman.
I feel like maybe when this was written, that employment contracts weren't as clear as they are today. I think a lot of today's employment contracts have clarity on what does constructive dismissal look like? Are you at fault or not at fault? What does your exit program look like? I think it's included standard language, if I'm not mistaken.
I doubt that there was an employment contract in 1963.
Right.
I know that Mr. Bryant, he just showed up in the mid-60s and started representing the city and submitted invoices and they were paid. That's how Les Burke did it in the mid-60s when he became county attorney. There wasn't an agreement, so there probably wasn't one for the city manager either. And Brandon, I think you make the point that may be why it's in the charter. I don't know.
Well, I would strike to remove the removal and then trust whatever's in the employment contract.
But I don't, that's the thing, there's a difference here. You're focusing on the employment contract part. This is for the public and the public hearing portion of it. Like, I understand the legal rules of it. The question here is more, this is focused to the public for their participation in the process. That's the thing. This is a political question. It's not so much the legality of the employment contract. Because I agree, they can do that, but this is for the public was upset or if there was something.
They don't want to see them get fired or.
That's what this is all meant to do.
Yes.
It's to avoid shenanigans by the commission and for you to have this public hearing and give it time so that the public can be involved. So it's a different, I think it's a different focus.
And I think,
That's why it's in there.
yeah, and I think the position of the city manager the viewpoint of I don't want to be here if people don't want me.
If a majority
Yes.
or
I
a
hear what
super
you're saying,
majority, yeah.
But there are communities that don't have that kind of historical support. And if there are things in the history or that indicate otherwise, it would be very important for them to be able to have that public hearing and for the citizens to understand shenanigans, really intentional shenanigans were not at play. Because you would have had the airing out of the problem early.
What do you think?
Wheels are turning. I mean, you used to serve on a board, sir.
Yeah, but we couldn't remove the.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
But you had to learn that in court.
But,
You had to learn that in court. You didn't, that wasn't known clearly. That came from a court order.
the way the government works, to my memory in the city, is that when Jonathan was an applicant, there were more than one applicants, and a lot of that was done in the public.
There were 80 applicants, yes, sir.
And interviews were done somewhat in the public, with the final 2 or 3 anyway. So if you're gonna do it on that end, shouldn't you have it on this end if the wheels fall off?
But that.
And that's kind of what I agree with JP, then that it is political, but this is a political machine. It really is.
But that hiring process isn't defined in here. Like,
Yeah.
that was the process that this commission decided to take to make it public. But
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, they have to make the decision to hire at a public forum.
They don't.
But
Yeah.
you publicly
That's true.
state that they could have interviewed
That's true.
one-on-one.
Because it doesn't say it
And I
here.
think that's.
Yeah,
what
they didn't
did.
interview me publicly.
Yeah.
What they did was
Clerk
Mark
was- And it was a different commission, different.
I happen to know that shortly before this position was, those were a similar time, but the beach did the same thing.
Coming back.
And they, yeah, I know you guys it kind of starts coming in when you start talking about it. They did all the interviews privately, and then at a commission meeting, kind of did like a little.
They all
They voted ballot that was secret until after it was announced. And then those ballots became part of the public record of the clerk's office, but there were no public interviews.
How is that permissible under sunshine?
You can have them.
One-on-one interview.
They're interviewing individuals.
I'm sorry, yes, the interview was not as a singular board out of the sunshine. They were all 5 individual, separate interviews. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on that. Yeah.
All 5 commissioners were there.
Separate, no, separate,
Yeah.
5 separate
5
interviews
separate
rather than one.
interviews. Oh, wow.
Yes, ma'am.
Secret ballot. Typically, it can be done, you put your name on the ballot, and then I think we have done in the past, then the clerk reads the ballot, the tally, and who voted for what, so it all gets into the minutes.
It's all on the record.
And then they still have to make a motion. I motion that we offer the job to, Ms. Schoon because she received 3 out of 5 votes.
Tie every vote to a person.
Correct.
You don't announce it, so you can't read the votes.
Yeah.
You can't read the room.
I guess the theory, I don't know the theory behind it, but the theory is you don't watch how the 4 in front of you vote
Right.
and see
Right.
how you're,
But after the fact, those ballots are made public record.
Yeah.
Until after the fact, you can see how the 5 individual folks voted.
Yeah.
There are times when people go public on their opinion.
Yeah.
You know how they're gonna vote ahead of time. You may not see it on the ballot, but everybody.
My 2 cents again, and I'm pretty good. This is not like a hill that I want to die on. If I had my way, I would put a period after city commission. I would call it a day. I think this provision is very unlikely to even come up. I think that it turns everything into a big public spectacle. I think the decision to terminate the manager would have to happen at an open meeting anyways. We have language in there now about adding these things onto the agenda, so I think people would have opportunity to see what was going on and participate in that debate anyways. And so I don't think it's necessary, but for real, like I'm not gonna, if everybody else wants to leave it there.
While we're talking about removal though, because we talked about this issue of making it a super majority instead of a straight
I'd
majority.
be far more inclined to do something like that than this public.
Right.
It just seems like a public spectacle to me. Like this is gonna be a fait accompli. Like if
So-
this even comes up,
Yeah.
it's just gonna be.
Is there a position that anyone has about moving it to do 4 out of 5 votes instead of the 3 out of 5 from the commission?
Let's try this. I make a motion that section 102 be the city manager shall be removable by the city commission by a supermajority vote, period. Or however you clean that up,
With the
lawyers,
majority,
and not
yeah.
do supermajority and remove all that other language. Because I'm going to, and I know what JP said, the
Mhm.
business side versus the political side, but I would rather lean on the contract written for the individual.
Make a mention of that too, so that, because what you said,
Just hold on. Is there a second?
I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'll second.
That's good for discussion.
Okay, sorry.
No, sorry for interrupting. It was not my intention to cause that delay. City manager contracts are typically written in such a way where it is costly to terminate a city city manager. So typically severance agreements that are negotiated in the contract up front can be pretty lengthy. So there is a guard against that, Commissioner. I mean, it's not like buying Debo out of his FSU contract. It's, it's not that bad, but it's, typically it's 6 to 8 months, maybe potentially even a year's worth of salary.
20.
It's the state law.
They changed it.
And Texas has really got it good over there, but there is a cost to terminating a city manager. Just wanted to be clear. So,
I think the supermajority clause covers the need for a trial or a hearing. You're gonna naturally, if you go through this 10 or 15-day process and there's a hearing, you're gonna try to get additional clarity. I think that compensates for 4 out of the 5 are all in agreement that this needs to happen. It is gonna be contract focused. There's gonna be a payout. It's gonna be expensive. Losing a city manager at any city is going to be a huge blow. But if the majority of the commission believes in it and believes in such, then I would say that would work out.
Yeah. Based on what I know about another environment, that would, the supermajority would not fix the problem, and people changed what they were gonna do at the very last minute. So if there's malice and other people feel pressured for whatever reason, if there were public statements that were made about what we're gonna do, this supermajority doesn't fix that. So I very much think that the supermajority helps, but when you really have bad actors, it doesn't. And so I think this is the only way to get it done. And in terms of different communities that have historically been mistreated, the supermajority isn't gonna fix it. It's just gonna be the good old boys did what the good old boys and gals did. This is the only way to clear the air, which is in the long run, better disinfectant, like, sunlight. Fix it, deal with it early, and it shows some, to a certain extent, good faith that we're gonna put this out there and the citizens will know right off the bat what it was all about. And that would just settle a lot of innuendo, concerns, historical fears, and a lot of things. It would just clean it up early.
JP?
I like them both, but I think we've made our points.
I'll call the vote. So Jan.
So we're voting for both together, right?
So the
4 out of
motion,
5. Sorry.
the motion is this to change the language of section 102. The city manager shall be removable by the city commission by a supermajority vote, and strike the rest of the paragraph.
Supermajority is 4 out of 5. Right, just the-
Well, for now,
Or if there were 7 commissioners.
you add.
So that-
It would be 5 out of 7
that's-
if you had.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, something to just think about. You might want to consider adding at the end of that sentence, unless agreed otherwise in the contract with the city manager. Because
Yeah.
I got my cap on, if your contract doesn't, the contract could say 4 fifths, but what if all the parties wanted it to be 3? My point is that they wouldn't be able to agree to that. They would.
I thought about that, and I thought the language would be in here so that you cannot contract around that.
Well, yeah, and I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I guess my point is this: as long as you, I believe that if this is in there, then all contracts with the city managers would then be a 4 fifths, and the parties, it'd be difficult to agree otherwise. That's my point. And as long as everyone understands that, that's fine.
Well, I think the language, there are a lot of lay people that look at these things. They need to understand that, that they can't contract out of this.
So with that comment, Ronnie, you should.
Yeah, I'm agreeable to add that comma in there. Yes.
So
See, I'm not.
Yeah, so and I knew I was potentially complicating it, but the real point was just if this is approved, I don't think you can contract differently than what this provides. So as long as everyone understands that, that's really my point. And if you wanted there to be flexibility, then you'd put a comma and say unless agreed to otherwise. But I don't think you can agree to otherwise if everyone puts in the four, puts in the
It's the
four
charter,
choices.
I don't think.
I know.
So it's your motion. Do you want to add in unless agreed to otherwise? You just want to say 4/5 and that's what it is?
Yeah, it does look like you need to be more clear because a supermajority could be 2/3, 3/5, or 3/4.
That's
So
why
you
I was
need to
at-
pick which one.
That's why I was at B.
Well,
Because if it increases the size later, wouldn't it just be?
Or if there's only 4 people there that day.
that's where I was going. What if you, yeah,
Yeah, so
a 2-2 motion fails. Anyway,
So
2/3.
3/4 motion would pass.
3-4.
That'd be a-
But
that'd be a-
super majority to me, so
Are you looking?
super majority of those present, I mean.
Yeah, majority is well defined.
I mean, in the trim process, it's defined too.
What would you define, what do you believe it's defined as?
One more than the majority.
I would agree. One more than a simple majority.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's well
I
defined.
believe both is correct.
So maybe that should be said, one more than something.
Well, so and that falls too, because if you only had 4 show up, then your majority is 3 and then one more, is 4. And that's still 4 or 5. I mean,
Yeah, if you don't have all 5 there, then you would have to have a unanimous vote to terminate.
But hopefully they would be there to determine.
No, it would be
No,
three,
John,
3 out of
it would
4.
be 3 out of 4 then, instead of 4 out of 5.
And if there's only 3 there, it's 2 out
2
of
out
3.
of 3.
That's true.
That's why you're the numbers person.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's of those who.
I think my original motion is where I want to keep it.
I agree. I think when I read this language again, it's based off of whether he called the hearing or not.
Yes.
He doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to.
Right, and does that language need to be in here that guarantees them, hey, if I want a hearing, I get that. I mean, if he was being terminated, and this wasn't in here, he could still ask for a hearing.
On what grounds? If it gets removed.
Yeah, I mean, review it or constant, whatever. that would
But then he
be
wouldn't have the
public
right to the hearing. Is the point you remove from the language, he
They could
wouldn't have.
deny it.
I mean,
There's not an appeal process.
Just, I'm confused why you would need a hearing with the same board that terminated your contract.
Well,
I mean,
it's
Well,
like.
that's a part
it's
of the
the
public.
wisdom of the founders. I don't know. That's
whatever they felt.
If you get your public behind you and the public comes in there and puts a bunch of pressure on the board that just fired you, then they might.
so let's do the.
Might change their mind.
Changing
And
their
they
mind.
may not be allowed to do it unless they have.
Touche.
I'm gonna be, hey, hold on, guys, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna be hyper here, and basically everyone on that table is not gonna like this. At a certain point, we got like 12 people here commenting on policy things, so like, I appreciate what y'all are doing, it's great, I don't wanna stifle communication, but it, like, we got a lot of people adding in comments here, so as a board, I guess, Ron, what's your motion at this point?
The city manager shall be removable by the city commission by super majority of vote. That's it.
Okay, so that's the same motion that we had. Any other debate? Because otherwise I think we can call the vote. Okay, all right, so Jan, you want to call the vote here?
Chairman Burke,
Do me last.
Mr. Nancy,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrera,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson Jansenius, Ms. Schoon,
No.
Mr. Berg.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right. Okay, any other city manager related? And just while we're looking at that, Nevin, this is the type of thing, like if you go under numbers, 103, section 3. It called it divisions of municipal governments, it should just be city. So look for the municipal government references too. Okay.
Is there a 4? We have a 4, nothing followed it, the next page has nothing. So this whole paragraph. I have the handout. I don't have the actual thing.
You have another one of these?
What is you
I have another one of these.
Excellent.
Thank you. Do I sit by JP?
Wrong.
Good. I got it. I'm good.
The only thing that I want to point out that I read in here, and this kind of also dovetails into maybe perhaps some of the conversation that we're going to have clerk, is also happens to be under subsection 3, 1033, where it says the manager's duties are to exercise control and direct supervision over all departments and divisions. And so I know we've talked a little bit about what departments roll up to the clerk, but this certainly contemplates that every division and department should roll up to the city manager. Throwing that out there. So,
Step does here.
Yes, that is.
divisions,
Yeah, except as hearing. provided.
that helps. Anyway, all right. Anything else that wants to be debated in that section?
When we get to the city clerk position,
Says officers.
and number 7 says the city commission, to keep the city commission fully advised as to the financial condition and needs of the city.
Sorry, how many you want?
Number 7,
And number 9, I think that's some of the duties of the.
be fully advised as to the financial condition and needs of the city and to submit for its consideration in annual budget. So that's 2 different things.
I think number 9 needs to be looked at carefully because it seems to be.
Right, so
Let's do 7
So
first.
7.
Yeah.
So are you just suggesting that we separate 7 out into 7 and then do 8?
Probably, yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Did you look at number 2? It says officers.
You know. Nevin or Jonathan, does subject to civil service provisions have any weight to it?
So some of our employees have civil service protection, but you don't at the at this level. I mean, like at my level or at.
So again, not a loaded question. Is that's a necessary phrase?
It is, yes, sir.
It's a statement of fact. It does not mandate that there be a civil servant.
Yeah.
But then the next thing, remove all subordinate officers, as we're saying, if the commission creates additional officers.
I would strike that officers, the clarity behind officers be charter officers only in the entire charter. And remove officers from every other language except charter officers. So it would be subordinate and employees of the city, no longer thing the 2.
I'm with you. I think I'm with you in spirit. I think how to. Is there a thing that's going on right now? There's such a thing as a subordinate officer?
No, so
That's not happening.
I would agree if you just strike officers and that makes subordinate employees the only ones that have the authority to fire anyway.
Okay.
We just need to take off officers and.
So Brandon, you can make a motion for that and JP seconds and.
Mhm.
All right. All in favor? And then, Brandon, I think you were suggesting another motion to separate 7 to keep the city commission fully advised as to the financial condition and needs of the city, period. And then a new section 8 that says to submit to basically the city commission consideration of an annual budget. Right? Correct. You're a second for that.
Second.
You debate. All in favor?
Aye.
And then Cecilia, you wanted to talk about 9?
Approve all vouchers, because it came in the same, I thought I heard testimony or comments earlier that approving of vouchers and things is something the city clerk did.
That would be similar to purchase orders.
They have to be approved by the city manager or his or her team. That is different than actually being paid out. That's a 2-step process.
Basically, they don't even make it to the clerk without you saying go for it.
That is correct. And then again, at certain thresholds, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's covered by the last sentence in 9. I read that.
who appoints assistant city manager or deputy city manager? Is that appointment by you? And then the board directs that we have two based off of your financial planning. Whatever that
They
looks
don't,
like.
they don't, they approve the budget.
They approve it, okay.
They don't
Oh,
require, yeah.
good find that.
They don't set number of directors or anything like that.
My only suggestion for 9, I know I'm down in the weeds, or I didn't like the very, very last line of 9 where it says regulations. I just didn't like the word regulations. I would prefer to say ordinances, policies, but.
I'll do a search for the word regulations.
Because we don't have regulations.
No,
So then.
like
let's just-
I'm, as you guys can tell, I'm really, really anal about like consistent
Me
terminology.
too.
And so all of a sudden we use, yeah,
No, it does
So-
because later on, there's regulations. Why is it,
Right.
why doesn't it, they say what they meant? So I would agree with Erica, and I would recommend it just we change regulations. If that's what we want.
is it, I mean, that's what that means, right, Evan? Is a regulation something different that,
State statutes.
Could it be state statute policies or, sorry, right? Because they're not all just, I'm thinking about our purchasing policies adopted by resolution, not ordinance.
There are purchases that are dictated, the procedures dictated by state statute and Florida Administrative Code in some instances. So I don't know for sure if that's what regulations mean, but it's, but here it says regulations as a city commission may time to time prescribe.
So
I guess they could say, make sure you follow state law. I don't,
can you just clarify that?
yes.
Whether it says, I mean, I had written in here regulations, ordinances or policies as the city commission, but just
Let's
something.
look at that and we'll give you a suggestion.
Anything else substantive on 9? Anything else substantive on city manager at all?
If I may, there was discussion earlier, I thought, about the residency requirement mirroring the city attorney. And apparently it was never actually voted on, so it does not show up in this red line, but we can put it in the next.
what, remind me what the requirements are again?
Right now, the city attorney needs to be an elector of the city.
Oh.
City manager, it's on, it says he or she need not be a resident at the time of appointment. And it does not say if ever.
Yes.
So there was some discussion, but apparently it was never, we didn't, anyway, Caroline didn't see.
Never got to it.
voted on.
You had requested that they all be the same, that they have the same requirements. That was provided. Some sample language to do that was provided in the January 20th memo, and you discussed it but didn't vote on it. There was a little discussion.
We can include that on the next draft and you can look at it and then you can take action. I like me, I didn't see it, so I wondered what happened, and so good chat.
Are we ready to vote on that now? Is there a disagreement about the residency requirement? I think we agreed,
Oh, we did. We agreed he should be a resident in the city.
right.
I believe we spoke, Mr. Chairman, about adding what the beach does, clarity to it, but within 6 months of the appointment shall become one. And I think that's the advantage that is the purpose behind it that the beach figured out, and I guess we didn't in the 60s, was you may hire someone that lives, say, in like Memphis. And obviously at the time of getting the appointment, they don't live in the city, but within 6 months of receiving that, they need to become a resident. Which I would argue is appropriate.
In the vein of I just didn't want us to skip over it. But we can provide some language if you can look at.
Well, yeah, we can throw that in. Is there, where are we at with what the languages that we want, that you have to provide within 6 months of hiring?
Similar to the attorney thing, sounds.
I can read the language that was provided to you in the January 20th. memo, just to bring everyone up to speed. So this is added. The city manager shall establish residence within the corporate limits of the city of Panama City, Florida, and shall become a qualified elector no more than 6 months after his or her appointment, though he or she need not be a resident of the city or the state at the time of his or her appointment.
I think that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I motion we adopt that language.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, any other debate? All in favor?
Thank you.
Was that just for the city manager?
Yes.
There's, you had asked to make all three of the officers consistent. And so there's some tweaking of some of the language to try to do that. Again, that's in the January 20th.
We'll come to the others.
I can read it to you as we get there.
All right, any other considerations regarding city manager in Article 7?
Move on.
All right, we're done with an article.
Out of the hot seat.
With.
We'll come back to it.
We did say we could change our minds and that's that,
You know, you better behave yourself.
Very, very true, sir, very true.
All right, Article 8.
So initially, I would want like the consistency, if we can carry over that same consistency from Article 7 into Article 8, we start with appointment. If there is a compensation clause or removal clause, powers and duties, but we carry over that same consistency.
Yep.
Into all of the chartered positions.
I agree.
So appointment being the same language that we agreed for
On the
city manager.
Yes.
So I can read to you the language that was provided to you in the memo, if you'd like me to.
No,
under
this,
section
we're
one.
talking about, Brandy, talking specifically about setting it up the same way we did the city manager, not
The same
specifically.
changes.
Yeah.
Not specifically.
No, Brandon is suggesting that we have basically section, whatever 104 is going to be, the appointment to administrative officer qualifications. And then the next section be, well, not compensation, because we've already covered that. And then a section on removal, and then a section on powers and duties.
Yes. We need to add the qualification for the attorney though. That's
Agreed.
Well, that's already in.
Yeah, section 105 would roll up to 104.
But what I'm saying is that, there isn't a qualification part of city manager, there has to be one city attorney. That's the one thing that won't be in the forms.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, just for clarification. JP, you can help us. And Evan. Caroline. 105, the city attorney shall be an attorney of at least 5 years' experience and admitted to practice in all courts of this state. Of this state, does that include federal courts? Because technically, a
think
federal
it's-
court is not a court of the state. It is in the state, but it's not of the state. Just
Either-
trying,
I think they're saying, we could change that to good standing, a member of good standing in the Florida bar. I think that's what the intention is there. I think that's,
admitted to practice in all courts. There are lawyers who've been here and they just push paper. They are not admitted to the practice of the courts.
I understand, that's what I'm,
Yeah, but I think.
that's why I'm
we should keep that.
suggesting we can change the language to be a member in good standing of the Florida bar.
But that doesn't allow you to practice in all the courts, like federal court. It's in the state.
I could
You
care
have to
less.
take
I
a
could care.
test. Yeah, go ahead.
I could care less if they've been admitted to the Southern District of Florida.
Yeah.
Oh, but then it says all courts of the state. No, we wouldn't
Yeah.
care about
Right.
the, my point is, I think this needs clarification because it's kind of broad.
JP, think just saying good standing with the Florida bar, because you can practice law in the state of
In
Florida.
the state of Florida, and have been admitted to practice at least 5 years. That's the standard for judges in any appointment, generally speaking, right now. Some are 10, but most are 5. At least in state court. I don't
Yeah.
practice in federal court.
Yeah, I guess from my comment is, and I've been exposed to a lot of different attorneys, with a lot of different backgrounds, really smart. And there's a really big difference of the acuity and understanding of potential litigation if someone has practiced, actually gone to court, versus someone who's just sitting behind a desk and talking to the client. In terms of understanding, having a
I don't disagree with you.
I just think that's an important component that the attorney have that background. I'm just saying.
I agree with you 100% from a hiring factor, but as far as a disqualification
Yeah.
factor, I think as long as they're admitted to practice in the state of Florida, that's fine. Whether they want to say, I want somebody with more trial experience or municipal experience, that's a commission decision. But the minimum bar is admitted to practice in the state of Florida. I don't care if you've been admitted to the Northern District, Middle District, Southern, whatever. As long as you can go to Bay County Courthouse, I'm good. Are we good with that?
So does it make sense? I mean, in all, so does it, I mean, so it needs to be changed because that's not what it says. What it says is not what you.
JP, you want to make a motion?
I make a motion that section 105 be amended to, the city attorney shall be an attorney admitted to the practice for at least 5 years in good standing with the Florida bar.
But what about, well, he said he wanted someone to be able to go up to Bay County.
Hold on. If you're in, my understanding is if you're in good standing, you can go to court.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
That's okay. Those are just not,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. He just couldn't go to federal court.
Right.
Which is in Bay County.
We don't have a federal say on it.
Hold the hearings here. They hold him.
There's that. Remember, you can second, you can't.
I'll second that. Any other debates?
Are you leaving out qualified elector of the city?
Well, isn't that going to be part of the,
I'm just trying to figure out where that's gonna go,
are we,
right?
are we gonna have the same language
Yes.
and?
That's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
So that would be the same. Carry over. I'm convinced.
All right, so any other debate? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? All right,
Okay, I have a question, since I have a room full of attorneys. This says that the city's going to appoint a city attorney. Is that an individual or is that a firm?
It's
How's that really handled?
it's an individual.
It's an individual.
There is a contract with me and also with Burke Blue. And the way it's structured in the contract is that Burke Blue is the support staff, or, the supporting attorneys for the city attorney.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I had a couple of things I think all kind of work together. Having I thought the same thing, Ron, was, one chest to poke that's an actual, the city attorney, just like there's a clerk and a city manager. But then also just the demands of the city go far beyond what one person can professionally do and also have hours in a day to do. And so I also didn't know if we need to contemplate the ability to also engage either other counsel or a firm or something along those lines. I mean, I was thinking more like, I'm sure there's instances where the city, they hire other firms besides the firms. There's gotta be some specialty, like if there's like a bond issuance or something like that, where you're hiring.
We have FEMA counsel, we have bond counsel, we have employment law attorneys, we have, of course, with our insurance, the insurance company provides counsel.
Jonathan, do you simply just view that as the city's just hiring other vendors?
I do. And we do it's same concept with engineers, sir. We have different engineers that got special nuance things and, whether it's a special issue or it's a bandwidth issue, we bring in outside, professionals in a myriad of different fields, not just law.
Okay.
Who oversees that? Like was that oversaw by the attorney, a charter position?
Well, any type of contract with them, it would go through both the city manager's office and the city attorney's office. But the CCNA, the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, gives the flexibility to to hire different engineers. However, to go on the list, they have to go through the commission and be approved. It's a little bit different with the attorneys. I think we just we can hire different firms if we want.
Okay.
And they are hired by the city commission. Not all of them are paid by the city commission. For example, the insurance company, when they appoint an attorney, we accept them and then they're paid for by the insurance company.
So, bear with me because I'm kind of in the weeds here. Like, do you get a W-2 from the city?
No.
Okay, so it goes to the firm.
Yes, it's all driven by the contract.
Our charter has him listed as the charter officer, correct?
Correct.
Employed by Burke Blue, only pay Burke.
It's fine.
By contract.
Here's how it works.
Yeah.
I had some proposed language in here about engaging outside firms, so that sounds like it's totally covered. Is it, again, not a loaded question, is it necessary and does it actually happen that the attorney endorses every contract?
For purchasing policy, yes, sir.
It's two things. we do try to endorse every contract.
What does that mean?
Sign it. I just mark approval. Approved.
As to
Performing
correctness.
Yeah.
But our purchasing policy, which was adopted by the commission through resolution, so just one vote.
It's not legally required except by the charter.
No, yeah.
So it's a policy issue, whether it makes sense or not, that.
I was just really just noodling on whether or not it needs to go in the charter or not. You know, if you have an internal policy that says the city attorney reviews everything and actually literally endorses it, obviously I think it's good practice that the city attorney review everything for sure. But I just didn't know if it becomes administratively burdensome that every time you guys have a contract, you got to go get in front of Nevin and have him.
The answer is yes to both of those, though. It does. I mean, it definitely takes longer for an attorney to review it. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, that there's a level of checks and balances and
Sometimes that friction is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And
It's not just contracts, it's agreements, leases and contracts. So it's all of those.
And the assistant, like Natalie, she'll sign off, under my authority. So it's not, doesn't have to be
It
my.
says-
Also, and I put a pin in this, but we probably need some other language about delegation of city attorney authority as well. Like if Nevin can't go to a meeting, just like we have city manager, that we put that in the charter.
Okay.
Something similar to that.
Let me make a stab at that. Now,
You
probably,
just use the exact same language, pretty darn similar.
Said it was listed on the contract.
yeah, it's in our contract, but
But if we have these charter officers, and then we have a provision to say if the charter officer can't be there, then they can delegate it, and we have it in the charter for the manager and the clerk, it should be the same thing for the attorney. Kind of a
we
COA.
can make that, obviously.
I don't care. I'm not signing stuff. I'm not doing those other stuff. But if you guys are telling me as administration that little bit of friction is probably a good thing and it's not that big of a deal, then leave it alone.
1,000%. Yeah.
Do you guys have any strong feelings? I
think it's good.
Then anything else about city attorney then?
Did y'all handle the residency part?
Yes.
Similar
we're
6
good.
months, same
Yeah.
thing? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
The next draft will have it.
Yeah. Super love that, but I don't have a good reason why not, other than just the number of attorneys to draw from that live in the city limits is not many.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
I said the number of attorneys that live in the city limits is not many. I mean, I think like literally, I think there's 3 attorneys that live in Lynn Haven. Like if you look up their address, I mean, it's like Al Stopka and a couple others, and that's it. And it's great with Nevin, you live in the city, right? Or don't, yeah, I'm just saying, I think if you truly looked at how many members of the Florida Bar reside in Panama City, it's probably like 20. But I mean, if that's whatever.
Well, you
You're
can
not wrong.
move, you can move there within 6 months, like the city manager.
Annex it. You hire somebody, you're good.
That's fine.
I'll just annex it. There you go.
I do see your point that if they live in Lynn Haven, we're really gonna make a move to Panama City, but
It's not a hill I want to die on, but
I
it's
know.
one of these things. I just
I
know,
know,
I mean, the total number of members of like the Bay County Bar is
I know,
200-ish,
I know.
right? And so you dwindle that down to the beach and Lynn Haven and rural areas and Callaway and Parker, and next thing, if you're literally looking at who resides within Panama City, it's just not a deep bench. But I mean, it doesn't turn over city attorneys very often either, so.
Right.
All right, what else about city attorney? All right, so now we talk about the clerk. I'll start wherever you want, I'm gonna front the record.
Take this back.
Me too.
All right, quick, let's vote on something.
Yeah.
So quorum, still a quorum with 3 here.
That's that. Yeah, we do.
It's the clerk.
Read 122 yet. I'm a posse.
All right.
We're done.
Yeah. All right, did we ever find out why there's so much underneath of this one? The historical side of what happened? Oh. Okay, happened, yep, something happened. So I like the data that Jonathan pulled. I thought this was very interesting. So I did go to ChatGPT and ask for some like guidance. What it said was most out of the city manager system or the council manager system, it is split. Going back to city clerk versus the financial component. And if we go back to the city manager side, we see that finance is initially rolled up under the city manager anyhow. But I still go back towards moving the city clerk underneath the city manager. Looks like 60% of all of the cities that have the city system that we have, with the population that we have, guys have the same model that the public participant emails.
I'd like to propose kind of a little bit of a middle ground. Because I'm with you on, I think the finance stuff should be moved, like Terry's email was talking about, kind of splitting the roles. I think it's just too many roles for the city clerk. I don't know how we do that, if we do that in the charter, if that's something that has to be done later internally. But I think it's just to simplify the role. I like to keep the clerk position as a charter spot, but have some of the duties and delegations of that finance department be moved to under the city manager. I think that kind of solves the problem, but still keeps that check and balance of the clerk.
So what duties does that leave the clerk more spelled out?
What Terry was discussing there, I'm not exactly sure of the finer details there, but some of the conversations about, you know, the fact that you have finance people who come here and then have to learn how to get the certifications to be a city clerk.
I'm just curious,
Or vice versa.
what are the, if you could go over, what are the main things that you would do outside of finance, the city clerk?
The city clerk prepares the agendas and the minutes for all the meetings, advertises all the meetings, does the public records, fulfills the public records request, manages all the city boards, their liaisons to.
About how many boards are
20
about 10?
20 boards.
It's a lot.
How many?
20.
It's maybe
It's doing
20 or
all that
25.
right for those boards, the notices.
Yeah, the agendas, the minutes, the notices for all the board meetings.
And are you also responsible for finding where they would meet? The boards would meet?
They're kind of preset where they meet.
Yeah.
And when they meet. But that's each board's decision to come up with when, just like you guys made your schedule when you want to meet.
So the Coral Springs model has the charter positions are the city attorney, manager, and an internal auditor.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that. And it looks like they do have 3 assistant deputy city managers. If you look underneath of that, there's the budget and sustainability director that's kind of standalone, that rolls under the city manager. The city clerk is more like the records keeping side of the world. Budget or the agenda, they actually fall underneath of a deputy, which 2 tiers under the city manager. So I actually kind of like this model. I like that finance, budget, and sustainability still rolls up underneath the city manager, but they keep that a little bit separate, even down to performance management, which may be an HR function. But I do like, I don't know what our current model is. Do our assistant city managers have departments that roll?
They're split. So
the CRA.
To your point, sir, yes, if we move the clerk, which is more the records and the minutes and that type of stuff underneath the city manager, I would put that primary responsibility underneath one of the 2 ACMs. That clerk would not report directly to me.
Okay. Finance, budget, and sustainability could have a director similar to the Coral Springs model that would still roll up directly under the city manager.
It could.
And then that would keep the city manager.
You know, what's interesting about the Coral Springs thing is I actually pulled their charter, looked up the internal auditor, and there's very little in their charter about what the internal auditor actually does. Now, I didn't get to a point to see if it's established by ordinance or whatever, but it's there, but it's kind of, I mean, I have language here, I can hand it out, but it's may appoint at any time an internal auditor shall be an individual who's a licensed CPA or a business entity consisting of a licensed CPAs to advise the commission on matters affecting municipal finance and other matters prescribed by general or special law or otherwise as directed by the commission. And each year they should evaluate whether or not they need an internal auditor, period. And I was like, there's gotta be, I mean, I searched internal auditor through the whole, charter, meeting code, whatever it is. There's one other reference under fire that had nothing to do with that.
It sounds like a project hire. We hire them once a year to do the audit and then we just keep them on payroll a year.
Oh, awesome. Okay, fair enough.
So it
It
sounds
could be-
like.
Yeah, that's as far as I got. I didn't get down to the word second. I mean, when I'm hearing those clerk duties about noticing and meetings and things like that, I mean, to me, that just very naturally falls under a city manager, like umbrella, not the city manager's job, but umbrella. And then, but I still really like the idea of a degree of independent financial oversight. Is that auditor role or somebody else who looks at the budget and looks at what's happening and can advise the commission without fear of recourse from anybody else.
So it could be sort of the same thing in inverse. We move the notice duties under city manager and we keep the finance duties under the city clerk.
Yes, I'm much more.
Yeah,
that'd be right. What we're
Yeah,
talking.
that's kind of the way I envision it. Just,
Big ticket issue is a second set of eyes
On the money.
on the money.
Okay.
That's really my concern.
I feel like that's where the auditor comes in though. They are a clean set of eyes and they are hired at project base, not at a salary base. You've got the city manager is accountable for budget execution, right? A second set of eyes just comes in to make sure he's delivering on that. But when it comes to like who's accountable, are we gonna have what we have now? We have two people where a city clerk, treasurer, which is already hard enough to staff as it is, reports on finances when our city manager is accountable for it. Should he be the voice that's reporting on it? And then we just have an auditor as needed.
and so
But
I'm not,
Real quick.
sorry, Jim.
But I don't think there's any different from the point that we were just talking about, where city manager does the contract, but the city attorney is the second set of eyes.
Yeah.
It's just the equivalent on the money side.
Yes.
So I don't, that's kind of what I envision. I don't see a problem with that being a charter officer. That's the.
But should it be a charter officer or should it be like this one where there's a director of budget and sustainability?
I think it needs to be a charter officer for the checks and balance issue. That's sort of where, I think it's the same thing. Like, that's the reason the city attorney will do it. It's the same thing. She's reviewing, city clerk is reviewing the form and what was it, the form and whatever of the correctness of the charges. I think it's the kind of the same thing, just on the other side.
I agree.
But the form and the correctness of the charges rolls under the city manager? Or that's an independent?
No, it would be
That's what I do.
that's what the city clerk or this new, I think, finance director or whatever, or auditor, whatever we want to call it, but that's what the city clerk, that's what the city clerk has.
I don't have a lot of heartburn over whoever dots the i's and crosses the t's and cuts the checks, roll up to the city manager. Where I'm looking at it is there's independent financial oversight, and I'm really bad about the terminology, and perhaps it's more comptroller, or auditor, CFO. I don't appreciate what the differences are, but what I'm thinking is, so when I hear auditor, I tend to think of they look at what happened and go backwards. Where I'm looking at somebody who can look at what the overall financial picture of the municipality is and say, hey, commission, your manager's spending money, drunken sailor, y'all are gonna run out of money, and not hear a recourse from the manager that, wait a second, we're doing all these good things. Like, they have this independent oversight that can help look more sort of forward. But maybe I'm conflating terms.
No, I think that's part of the problem, is figuring out the term and then figuring out the duties. I think the question is gonna be how we slice the duties.
If I may, Mr. Chair, slight difference, I think, between what you're asking or considering to do with the CFO or internal auditor, whatever you call it. So the policy says, in regards to the attorney, all contracts, leases, and agreements, regardless of amount, must be reviewed by the purchasing division, the city attorney or designee, and the city manager or designee prior to signature. Now, Nevin can review it, but I don't have to have his approval to authorize that contract. So it's more of a council thing. So there's not language that says, so if we have a disagreement or something he doesn't like, but I'm good with it, I could sign the contract. I think it's a little bit different when you're talking about some financial controls, like, should the person in my position be able to tell, the one that hits enter on the checkbook or the cash flow out, I don't care what you think, pay it anyway. I think that's a little bit different than a potential contract. So just something y'all consider as y'all deliberate this.
Well, that's fine. I agree with what Brandon is saying.
Who, and this is a question for staff. Who checks to make sure that there's not like fraud going on, or that actually the things that are being purchased, or that actually things are going through the formality of the correct purchase orders and approvals? Is that an auditor, or is that internal?
Multiple people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really it's the director and the ACM over that particular department. It's the purchasing division, and it's the last stop is Jan's office, accounting.
Okay. And then is there a third party that ever comes in and does that stuff too?
We have an auditor every year.
Yeah, there's an independent audit.
External auditor.
Internal auditor.
Yeah, it's a local law firm that comes in.
But they basically look at the documents that you provide them. They don't hunt around.
No, they're not looking, they do fraud questionnaires of individuals that are in the city, but they are not specifically looking for or seeking out evidence of fraud.
So
Misfeasance, really.
let's say something is $1,000, so that would not have to come through myself or the city manager's office at all, but the director would have to approve it, and the purchasing division has to sign off on it, and Jan has to sign off on it. So even a small transaction like that is going to have 3 key people kind of looking at it.
How do you know if it's a legitimate purchase?
When I find things that I question, I bring them to the manager's attention.
And then who oversees revenue generation, that taxes are being collected and people are paying and all that good stuff?
Accounting.
Yeah, the accounting.
That falls under you as
That's
well.
the accounting division under the city clerk treasurer's office.
We also look at it in the budget office.
Yeah.
And Jan does a monthly financial.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just kind of, for me, business 101. I mean, I use the chest to poke, the neck to choke, the chest to poke. Like, ultimately, who's the one who's accountable for that thing? And I'm not disagreeing with you guys. It's great to have multiple checks and balances, but ultimately it needs to be one person that you can look at and be like, what's going on here? And then ultimately, it sounds like right now it's the clerk. When it's all said and done.
That's the final step that authorizes cash flow out from the city. I would say that's where the buck stops.
How often do you have questions for the department heads and so on?
Every week, usually, I have some questions about invoices. But it's mostly procedural. On occasion, there are purchases that I don't think are appropriate. And the reason why I don't take them to the department head is because the department head doesn't report to me. I take them to the manager because the department heads report to the manager.
But you're the canary in the coal mine and you say, I feel funny
This
and.
is wonky.
Yeah, or I mean, that I would say that it happens, but that's rare. Most of the time it's like, hey, are you aware of this charge, or did you or Brandy or Jared authorize this? And because it would be something that we would need to authorize as a CMO. But most of the purchases are clearly spelled out in our purchasing policy and procedures manual.
I mean, we cut between 200 to 300 checks a week in the payables, and Jan reviews every single one of those with the supporting documentation.
Nevin, can y'all look, as we're talking, under Article 13, is it in, maybe I'm missing it, I didn't read it before, but pretty closely. Is all of that sort of book, record keeping, notices, meeting minutes, all that other stuff, is that provided in here as a clerk responsibility? Anyways, so let's keep going, then y'all tell me if you can find it. So Ron, where are you now?
On the division of the duties, I haven't left that. I think they ought to be separated.
Sorry, which duties?
Chief financial officer and a clerk are 2 different things to me. If the budget allows it to be another individual, because we have one doing it all now, kind of sort of. One's responsible, let's put it that way. I don't know how much. Golly, what am I about to say here? The duties of the clerk of minute taking and all that should not be a CPA, somebody doing that work to me. Should not be a chief financial officer. That is further down the organizational chart to me. Even though she delegates it presently, still, I think that's down in the organizational chart, where a CFO may be, a charter position. Clerk, just the clerk, not so.
So if we continue on with that CFO term, what would their ultimate responsibility be, or what would their primary responsibility be?
Well, from the business world, that would be anything that's a financial. I mean, I still struggle with it works well with these two, but you have somebody hired by the commission that the city manager butts heads, that's gonna happen one day.
On August 11th, yeah.
Yeah. So, I still have a struggle with that. But that's just my business side of me, But the CFO position would be, to me, everything financial would fall under the CFO, including the budget, if you were going to do it. Everything.
I mean, approval would still be by the commission, but the proposal,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure I'm sure the charter officers would work together on it, but ultimately,
Sure.
yeah.
I think it's interesting, if you flip to page 2 here, you look at the finance director reports to, just about all of the cities locally that are listed here, they report to the city manager. That's the CFO reports to the CEO, the mouthpiece, he has to execute. Now, all of his departments have to do it too, but one person is accountable from the city manager, that's city manager. So the finance side supports, where I think we're the only ones that say, Tallahassee is as well. Commissioner, treasurer position combined with the clerk.
Yeah.
It's just on all these other cities has it rolled up to the city.
Yeah, I like the idea that there being design friction to spending money. The payable system and the checking to make sure the integrity of the invoices and stuff are accurate rolls under somebody else who's independent from the city manager, because although we get to the point where I have to say this, I trust Jonathan here, but there's a natural political tendency to want to spend money. Like, people are very happy when you spend money and they're unhappy when you don't spend the money. Like, it's just a natural thing to have somebody who's independent of being like, listen, like, I know this is important, but we still have to follow the process and the formalities. And I don't answer to you, I answer to the commission. And there's a lot of value there.
Well, anything that's outside of the approved budget has to go to the commission and get a budget amendment, even if it's $1.
Which comes through you.
Well, it goes to the commission.
Yeah, but it comes through you, right? You have to present that.
Correct. Yeah, I would not advance it unless I agreed with it. So, yeah. So
But at the same time, you can move money inside.
that is correct.
There's a lot
Buy
of
whatever.
liberties inside the budget as to what category.
Buy
that can go
whatever you
into.
want.
The only thing I would have y'all consider during that is, I think, that it's kind of a two-way street. Like, it would be very, like, if I wanted to move money appropriately within my budget, like, I would say respectfully, I don't think the CFO should have a say in that, because he or she's not the one that's answering for the operational requirements. And I tell you, we get hundreds of requests every day to do stuff for the citizens and business of Panama City. And I think that could create unhealthy friction if you've got someone that doesn't have to answer for the operational responsibility of the city, tying the hands of someone that does. Again, operating within the appropriate, budget constraints.
That's
Yeah,
encryption
budget
and emergency repairs.
was under city manager, and the payables and accounting is under the clerk treasurer. So you can have that.
There would be no reason to question whether, if it's an internal transfer.
Right.
There would be the only thing that I ever question is if it's coming from personnel.
Yeah.
Because personnel's gonna run through the budget, whether the money's there or not.
Because you got to have the spot approved and everything.
All right, so let's do this. I mean, Ron, you've got a hard out at 2:15. Mine's not a super hard out at 2, but it kind of is. Do we have any guidance for staff on language, or are we still debating this?
I think it might be helpful to sort of get a general sense of where each of us is.
Okay.
And so it's
I like
sort of a majority thing that asks for that comment.
All right, well, go for it.
I liking what you had said earlier, that the finance be completely separate on the same level so that there's no way that anyone can say there's conflict or they feel duress or worry for their job, that kind of thing. And since we have that system, I'm willing to redefine the notices and the rest of that to come out of city clerk. I think, Ron, you had the comment. I agree, that's pretty administrative. And that's not something she has to do, or that position has to do. But I like keeping the term city clerk because our citizens are accustomed to that, and we just redefine that. Take a small piece of it off and leave you with our biggest concern, which is what you've been doing. This would be my feel.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing there is that the administrative side of it all has a bunch of legal requirements, right? So that's just part of it, just to make that point. But yeah, I think keep the position, whatever we want to call it. I think it needs to remain an independent charter position, and we need to split the duties off and cut those through. Where I am.
I can come back to you.
Well, I don't think my opinion will change if you come back to it, but it's just my CEO mentality that I want my CFO under me. That's just my mentality. Now, does that work in the city? It does some places, you know, but I'm like you said earlier, I'm not willing to die on that hill if we think that needs to be a charter position. There are other checks and balances you could put in if it was with the city manager, but at the end of the day, the city manager has the accountability. And that's why I would prefer it be a CFO position be under the city manager.
Brendan?
I agree with Ron, 100%.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of having an independent charter officer that just deals with money in, money out, and making sure that the integrity of the money out process is sound, and then also just kind of reviews the budget versus actuals and can independently advise the commission if there's irregularities or any of that type of stuff. And then all of the ministerial non-money things, the meeting minutes, the notices, the record keeping, whatever else, that rolls up into some direct report somewhere underneath the chain of command that goes up to the manager.
I wouldn't be an advocate for them being a charter position that's on the books full time. A CFO could be, or a CPA, whatever that turns into, that should be giving our city manager oversight and insight into the financial health of the city, and then he reports directly to the city commission. I think that we could hire this internal auditor and be much cheaper and have a much more trusted process than having a full-time CFO that is a peer to the CEO of the city.
I can tell you that independent auditor is not, that you hire sporadically is not gonna be cheaper than a full-time person. We pay more for our audit, our annual audit.
Brandon finishes comment.
I'm sorry.
I think if it's not gonna be cheaper, she's part of it. I think I'm open to hearing that.
Yeah, it's
All
not.
right, so
Our independent audit is more than I'm making a year, and they're here for 3 weeks.
all right, why don't we
Wow.
noodle over these things? We'll come back. When are we coming back, Jonathan?
Let me look, sir. I think March 5th, right? That sounds right.
Yeah, I think I would like to take some time. Nurse, certainly, but what would you like
You
to
can
see?
see a new bump in the road.
That segment.
And then, Jan, if you happen to still have our proposed schedule, what were we gonna do after?
It's actually not till March 26th. If y'all want to try to add the 5th, we could, but there's nothing between now and the 26th, just FYI.
I'm not available on the 5th. Sorry, I know I said the day. I thought we had a meeting on March 5th. I know, I'm sorry. I thought we did too. We do have a
Meeting for Jonathan.
meeting on.
Maybe 26. On this, what was,
I apologize. We do have it on the fifth. I don't know why my computer we do. It's the fifth and the 26th, sir. Of
We were
March.
planning
My
on-
apologies. Yeah, those are previously scheduled and noticed meetings, the fifth and the 26th.
So what were we gonna get to after officers? Jan?
So I don't have the fifth. After officers, manager of police protection, fire protection, finance generally, taxation, public utilities, boards and commissions. Not necessarily in that order. But we've already done the officers, the manager, the attorney, and I guess we'll finish up the city clerk.
I probably won't be available on the fifth, because I know that causes a further deadlock on the clerk issue. But I'll be in trial that day.
Oh.
And just a quick mention on the police protection thing. I've been asked by my office not to comment and vote on any of the things that have to do with the police here in town. And I consulted with the Florida Bar and they asked me also not to vote on anything regarding police protection. Just so if I'm not gonna be here on the fifth, you may wanna take that up just as a suggestion, because I can't vote on those things anyway.
Are you allowed to comment?
To an extent, that's my guidance from the Florida Bar and my office.
Same thing doesn't apply to fire though, right?
I'm okay with fire, I just can't touch anything, I mean, I work with them every day.
So shall I put that on the next agenda?
This is, I know we're at 3-2 on the clerk, and I probably, again, I can't be here on the fifth.
Would perhaps we can do police first next meeting. I mean,
Okay.
I reviewed it at one point months ago and I didn't see like massive issues with it, but let's do police first. And then would y'all be open to doing, like, should we not do finance, taxation and bonds together?
we couldn't find it, bring us back to the division of duty.
Yeah, I think clerk, finance, taxation and bonds kind of all work together.
Yeah.
So are y'all, so if y'all are okay with it, let's plan on getting Article 11, which is police protection. And then we'll wrap up, hopefully, clerk, but you're,
That's what he was.
yeah, I got you.
No, thanks.
He was saying that he wouldn't be.
Because you'll be tied 2-2 if I wasn't here. Clerk.
Want to do the other four, fire, public utilities and boards of commission.
I'll be good, clear.
All right, why don't we do police, fire, would you say public utilities?
No. Boards and commissions.
Mhm.
So I see you back in the brief summary.
Oh, that's the whole thing, you can disagree on.
Okay.
That's fine.
Do you have the brief summary or you have it too?
And you could
Yeah.
read through that.
Yeah.
And send some of your thoughts for us to share with the board as they deliberate.
If we really had to, if you had a break during the file, like a little recess, you could text us and we can have a Zoom and then we can vote.
The Zoom is always, he could hop on and off very easily.
I do think
It already exists.
there's no picture of the jury.
Yeah.
I think that's.
It's brains.
I think that. I'll have it probably. I'll have.
We'll have someone go pull the fire alarm.
JP,
There you go.
so, during the break, since the Zoom is all the way out. It's hard to be in.
It will be, thank you guys. Is there anything else or can we entertain a motion to regard?
Move adjourned.
I second it.
All in favor?
Bye.
Five. Thank you guys.